Just so little ground rules here again. I'm Robert Smith, Town Manager, Town of Windermere. I do these every month. The Q&As. The reason that this one was pushed back is that we had a conflict with another event, which is the Candidates Night, which I would ask all of you to go ahead and go to our YouTube channel and take a look at if you did miss it. No topic is off the table. You can ask me anything that you want, and I'll be more than happy to answer it. If I don't have the answer, I'll be more than happy to get you the answer. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything that you need to vent about, make sure that you are directing all of those towards me and nobody else that's on this call. We all want to be informed, engaged as both residents and staff, so we want to be as respectful to each other as much as possible. And again, as I said, it's an open forum. So with that said, if you want to go ahead and either type in a question, raise your hand, and then I'll call on you and go from there. All right, Landra.
Yes, I actually just had a couple of announcements. Landra Robeson, I'm a community relations specialist for the Orange County Tax Collector's Office, and just wanted to let everybody know that that February 28th is actually the deadline to get the discount for the 1% in your taxes. And also have an announcement from the Property Appraiser's Office as well, that they're extending the homestead exemption filing to March 1st. So if you all know anybody who purchased a home the latter part of last year, they do have a little bit more time to go ahead and get that in. So if you all want to just let everybody know about those couple of things, that would be fantastic.
So March 1st is the deadline. Is that the regular deadline, Landra? Or
it's not. It was actually supposed to be. She actually sent me the information. I think it was supposed to be the 24th. So
okay.
She extended it out like a week or so.
Good. Okay.
To go ahead and give people a little extra time through the transition. So that's fantastic news for a lot of people. So hopefully they can get the word out so people can take advantage of it.
That is, it really saves a lot of money over the long run.
Absolutely. Now for the taxes, for the to pay your property taxes to get that 1% discount, ours is the 28th, so it is at the end of the month.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And for those of you that missed the last one, it was just me and Ms. Robeson talking about the town of Windermere for about an hour while she was putting on some groceries and some stuff at Sam's Club. So I really appreciate the attendance tonight.
Absolutely.
All right. First question comes from Karen Fay. Robert, do you want to explain the 2-lane roundabout at 6th and Main and the procedure that might happen from here? As you know, we have been dealing with cut-through traffic for several years now. 75% of the traffic comes through the Horizons West area, so it comes from west to east. We are surrounded by pristine, outstanding Florida water bodies. So the growth has happened, and it's happened a lot faster than I think Orange County anticipated. And I believe they were very friendly to growth as opposed to smart growth. And I can say that for the record. The reason being is that it is a bedroom community. It is not a typical community that you see that is planned nowadays. It's completely opposite from what happened in Lake Nona. Lake Nona, they had the industry, they had the firms, and they had the infrastructure in place prior to development. Horizons West is completely opposite. I think the largest employer in Horizons West is either the Walmart or the Publix that's over there. So everybody that lives there does not work there. Again, the planning theory that people are coming up with now is create communities that are live, work, and play. That is, again, the complete opposite of what it is. So again, 75% of traffic that is coming through the town, which most of it's coming from Chase to 6th in the morning, and then in the PM peak is coming from 6 down to Chase. So the theory is, and there's 2 theories to this. Theory 1 is let's make it as hard as possible for people to get in and out of the town of Windermere as far as traffic. People believe that that will stop people from using us as a cut through. Now, since there's no parallel relievers, which I mean, there's no other relief roadway that would pretty much prevent anybody from, driving 7 minutes out of their way, as opposed to using Town of Windermere as a cut through. No matter what we do to slow them down, the studies have shown they will not use a different route. So it's here, it's going to be here. And because the fact that, again, if we're making it harder, that gives them more of a opportunity to use the side roads. You might say then, well, we have all these rules as far as using the side roads as cut through. We have limited law enforcement. We don't make a lot of money off of tickets, and we would rather be patrolling than stopping people. So the traffic's here, it's here to stay, and it's going to get worse. The only way that we can make it get better would be to, and again, the theory is get them in, get them out during those peak times. So during the peak hours, again, we would be looking at 2 new roundabouts and 1 improved roundabout. The 1 improved roundabout would be at 6th Avenue. It'd be similar to the one that you see at Roberson and Windermere Road. So you would have the continuous lane, and then you would have the right turns. So you're adding a lane to it, so people that are going from Chase and Main to Windermere, they can just roll through, and the same thing to the south. And then you'd have an additional lane that would go ahead and take you right into 6th Avenue. So you do that one first. So you're looking at about 9 feet of additional lane width, which we could probably reduce the size of the pavers in order for us to go ahead and not have a huge impact on the downtown area, because we're pretty much constrained by the development that's already there. But we have talked to the people that are potentially developing the 500 block, and we've already anticipated that possibly happening with the improvements for the new town facilities. So that would be able to relieve them off of 6th Avenue. And that would have to be done before you do anything at Windermere Road and Main or Chase and Main, because if you open those 2 up, or at least one of those up, the 6th Avenue roundabout would just be completely overwhelmed, and the stacking would be crazy. So we would do that one first, and then we would ask council to approve the Windermere, or the Chase and Main second, and then Windermere Road and Main third. Again, it's based on whichever theory that the council is going to accept and to approve, but that would be taken to town council. We're currently in negotiations with Orange County. As you know, we have a new District 1 Commissioner, Ms. Wilson. I met with her about 2 weeks ago, and I met with her today as well. And then we'll be setting up a subsequent meeting with Darren Gray and also some Orange County officials to go over not only Windermere's issues as far as traffic, but all of West Orange County. We believe that we've been ignored for too long, and we're trying to correct those issues. Just talking to Oakland, they're getting about 70,000 trips a day from Claremont, going from west to east in the morning and east to west in the afternoon, which is crazy. In addition to that, not only Horizons West for the development, but Lake County is looking at a new development to the southeast of Lake County, which is at or around the size of Horizons West. So just imagine that, and that's a veteran community as well. So you're just adding another Horizons West over in Lake County, and everybody's going to go from west to east in the morning and east to west in the afternoon. And Lynx and Sunrail is not going to fix any of that. So again, for the 6th Avenue roundabout, the theory is to get them in and get them out as fast as possible. And people might say again too, well, if you do that, then it's just going to be a lot of traffic and stuff like that. And I won't be able to get off of or out of my house or my roadway at 5th, or actually 9th, 8th, 7th, anything like that. When you have stop signs, it meters the traffic. Sometimes when you want to take a left or right, you think, oh my gosh, are they doing this on purpose? Because all the cars are metered to where it's not enough time for you to actually take a left or a right. And the reason for that is because of the stop signs, because people stop, then go, stop, then go, stop, then go. So it creates that car. If you have that continuous flow of traffic, then you would have that bunching of the cars to where you'd have like 4, brake, 4, brake, enough for somebody to take a left or a right. But again, these are still in the infancy stages of negotiating with Orange County, since we don't have the money to fund these or self-fund these. We want to make sure that we are fixing up the roadways that we currently have and correcting the stormwater issues before we actually get to those 3 projects. But as stopgaps, we're doing the no right turns, no left turns during those peak times. But at some point, I think the county and the town of Windermere are going to have to come to the realization that traffic's here. I don't believe there's an area where we can do a parallel reliever. I think that ship has sailed with the development that's occurred. So again, it's going to be council's direction, and we'll see what happens when we actually have a plan to cure that. But that's what we're looking at as far as, you know, people say the rumors of the improvements. It'd be actually just adding 9 feet of lane width to make sure that we're accommodating that much traffic on 6th Avenue. Did that answer your question, Karen? Okay. I've never seen you less vocal, Karen. Usually you're raising your hand. All right. Next question. And if anybody has any insight or a magic wand on how to get a 5-year-old to listen to you, I'm all ears. All right, Karen. You have more. Go ahead. Another one, how tall will the building be at Susie's corner? That's a good question. That's why I have Brad Cornelius on the line with us. So what I'll do is, and we don't want to be unfair to the applicant, but understand this, and this is what a lot of people have confusion on, because we did get an email question ahead of time. And, you know, we'll address that one, and we'll address this question as well. We were supposed to have a workshop last night relative to the development of the 500 block. What we didn't want it to become is a political issue. And we wanted to make sure, because again, the election is going to happen on March 9th, that you have at least 2 council members that will not be on the council at the time that the vote will be taken. So we want to make sure that it was after that election, so you know, or we know, who those council members are going to be, and they can ask the questions of the actual applicant and also Brad to get all the information. A lot of people think because somebody submitted an application for redevelopment of something that the town supports it. That's far from the truth. Everybody has their rights to develop their properties, but they have to make sure that they're in accordance in the guidelines of the town of Windermere and the state of Florida and Florida building codes. So if somebody came in and they wanted to build a assisted living facility, the Empire State Building, so on and so forth, we can't stop them from applying. But what we can do is make sure that they adjust their plans so they're in compliance with our comp plan, with our downtown development guidelines, so on and so forth. So a lot of people have that misconception just because people have submitted something that the town is in favor of it, and that's not the case. And for all the emails that everybody has sent me, I don't have a vote. So you can go ahead and direct those to the elected officials, or I will forward them to the elected officials. Because again, I don't have a vote, but Brad and I do make sure that they are in adherence and in accordance with all the rules and regulations, and then it's up to the town council whether they meet those guidelines and if they can legally add any additional restrictions to that development. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brad and unmute him, and we'll go ahead and get into that.
All right, I'm unmuted. Thank you, Robert. For those who don't know, as Robert said, my name is Brad Cornelius, and I with Wade Trim, and I serve as the contracted town planner for the town of Windermere. I think I know most of you on here. So the question about the height, Ms. Fay, is it's proposed as required no higher than 35 feet. So the proposal is the buildings will not exceed 35 feet, which is the height restriction within the town and within the downtown district. The proposal currently shows the building that would be closest to the corner. A portion of that would be 2 stories, but it would still be under the 35-foot threshold requirement.
Yeah, and the reason that the restriction is 35 feet is for fire protection. So no home in the town of Windermere is over 35 feet unless they get a variance for some architectural designs or something like that. Brad, do you have the question that was sent to us?
Yes, let me pull it up here real quick. Said yes too quick. I don't have it specifically. I don't know what I did with it. Oh, that's,
All right.
oh, no, I did.
It's from Ms. Neal, I think it was.
Yes. Yes.
Question is,
Robert? Yeah, go ahead and read it.
Oh, no, I have another question while you're looking for that. Will it be as close to the road as what is in College Park? Are you familiar with the development of College Park?
Yeah, what I can say to that is it will be consistent with the downtown master plan. It does call for the buildings along Main Street as they are today to come up to the sidewalk. So they will be up to the sidewalk to create that pedestrian part. Now, part of this proposal, though, some of the building frontage that's being proposed will be set back a bit. Part of the reason is to protect some of the trees that are out there, but also to create somewhat of a plaza in the front. So it will be oriented to the sidewalk as the master plan calls it to be with that project. Robert, I have that other question now up if you'd like me to read it.
Okay, before you answer that one, let me just give some background too, is that the town of Windermere back in, I think, 2004, went through an extensive, and I know a lot of you that are on this call were a part of that, master planning of the downtown area. And the reason for that was because of the Kevin Azus development plans. And as a result of that, this is what created the comp plan amendment, which is your underlying pretty much like residential, commercial, so on and so forth. So you have this underlying restrictions through the comp plan that they have to adhere to, which also include downtown development guidelines. So this is something that went through the ringer, I think, for almost over a year back in 2004, if not 2007. I forget what the exact year was. But that's all been hashed out. Now it's actually the developer trying to adhere to those guidelines and trying to develop something based on those. And you have the question. If not, I have it there, Brad.
Oh, yeah, I have it here as well. So the question that Robert received earlier is from Ms. Neal. It says, does the 2007 plan overlay require that the existing residential properties be rezoned to commercial for development? Or is it an option to develop and improve the existing commercial property without rezoning the residential properties? So that was the question that was submitted earlier today. So the answer to that is what the town's comprehensive plan requires, as Robert kind of said, that's the main document that overarches, regulates what happens in the town. So what the comprehensive plan requires is for any development with this designated downtown overlay district that's shown on the future land use map and adopted with the master plan, that it has to go through the rezoning to a planned unit development, a PUD. So it doesn't rezone the properties to commercial, it rezones it to the PUD, the planned unit development. And the reason for that is, and as Robert said before, is number one, it allows the town and the town council and the development review board to make sure that what happens on that property is consistent with that master plan that was adopted previously, that meets all the standards and requirements. So it goes through a very thorough review with the development review board as well as the town council. And that's the primary purpose and reason of the PUD. It also provides the ability for the town council to put conditions and actually enhancements or additional buffer or what may be needed to assure compliance. But so there's not a requirement to go to commercial, but it's required to get rezoned to planned unit development, which is what the process there is going on now, is that PUD rezoning. And part of that PUD rezoning also includes a preliminary development plan that gives a general idea and concept of what is proposed to be built there. So yeah, it doesn't go to commercial, but it does go to the planned unit development.
Okay. Another question that was posed, could this change if and when we get the water master plan implemented? The only change that would occur, I think, is if we get sewer.
Right.
Because they're pretty much restricted on this amount of square footage for their septic system. But for that septic system, if we had wastewater in the town of Windermere, they'd probably be asking for a lot more square footage.
Right, and there's already water to the property from Orange County Utilities, so the master plan for water would not affect the project.
Correct. The buffer next to the parking lot that is on Oakdale residential side, will it be like the buffer on Forest? That's to be determined. They are required to have adequate buffering. I believe it's 20 feet.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the required buffer along Oakdale by the master plan is a minimum 20-foot buffer, landscape buffer with a 6-foot wall with the landscaping on the outside of it. So that's the requirement within the master plan. So it'll be similar, but in my opinion, I think at the end of the day, it'll be more. It'll be, because it does require a wall. It does require the landscaping on the outside of the wall. But that as Robert said, that'll be determined as it goes through the process.
And just for everybody's edification too, is that is already in part of the master plan, a parking lot. It's just a matter of how do we adequately buffer that parking lot from the residents. And I think Councilman Martini had a great point, is because they pretty much had their stormwater system retention pond in just one area. If they made it more linear and that was possible, then it would just add on to that 20-foot buffer. So that 20-foot could actually become 40 feet, depending upon how much water retention they had to have. And people always ask about, okay, well, added traffic, added this, added that, parking. Parking is based on square footage. And, sometimes it's based on what type of uses that you're getting. If you have a restaurant, you're going to need more parking than you would for a real estate office. You think of Tim's Wine, you think of, Dixie Cream, all of that. Of course, Dixie Cream is going to be utilizing more parking than all the other vendors that are within that area. That would be through people having their business tax licenses. We will not approve a business tax license if they were to exceed any of their parking requirements. Now, they do have the option if we want to save some trees, or we want to reduce the amount of parking in that area, the town does have a code to where they could pay for parking in a different area, meaning that if we wanted to add parking alongside 5th Avenue, alongside 6th Avenue, they'd be able to pay us to go ahead and improve that parking as opposed to them having it on site. And when it comes to traffic, again, they are adding, I think, about 500 trips. In any other city, that would be considered de minimis, where they wouldn't even bat an eye on it. But as we know, in the town of Windermere, we're different because we have to experience a lot of traffic already. But again, it all depends on what types of uses and what types of vendors they have. Right now, Mr. Carr has stated that the people that are his current tenants will be his future tenants, but does have plans for a restaurant, I believe.
Right. Robert, could I do just a little clarification to your answer there, just to make it very clear? Within the downtown district, it's a uniform parking standard of 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So it's a blanket that covers it. And then there is a provision within the parking standard for protection of trees that go down to 3.5 per 1,000. And so that's how the standard is. But as what Robert said is correct. Also with the traffic, just one thing I also want to just make it clear to everyone, that 500 trip number, that's a daily trip. That's a 24-hour trip number. That's not during the peak hour, when everything backs up in the town. Those trip estimates that were provided in the traffic study are in the PM hour. So in the afternoon backup, everybody coming through town, coming 6 down to Chase, it's projected at 48 trips in that PM peak hour. So in that afternoon rush, it's 48. In the morning peak, which is everybody going the other way, going from Chase down to 6, it's 23 peak hour trips. So the 500 number is over a 24-hour period. So the ones that when we do traffic planning and traffic analysis, we really focus on those peak hour numbers because that's where the greatest impact is on the transportation network is during those peak times. What came out of that traffic study, just so everybody's aware, the town's engineering consultant, Kinley Horn, did review the traffic study that was provided. And the recommendation, which is being proposed by the applicant, is they will be installing a right-hand turn lane coming into their project off of 6th Avenue. So it'll take those trips out of the queue that's queuing through the roundabout and give them a turn lane into the project. That driveway also on 6 will be a right in, right out only. There will no be lefts coming in or out of that entrance. I see Ms. Fay had a question about Oakdale. There will be no access onto Oakdale Street. There'll be no driveways, no connection. That'll be a buffer along the entire back part of Oakdale Street. No access to Oakdale. And then there'll be full access on 5th Avenue on the other side. So that's kind of the bigger transportation picture.
And Brad, for the traffic, the 500 trips is in addition to what they already have entitlements for?
When they did their analysis, they did not account for what's already developed on this site. They just did the analysis just assuming all their trips are going to be new trips. Typically, when you do these kinds of studies, you would do a net analysis and say, well, based on what's already on this property. So in this case, we have the real estate office, we have the ice cream place, we have the Elysium, the kitchen cabinet store, and we have the single family lots. So when you look at the potential trip generation for those uses, the net change, it's still a change. There's still more trips from what's being provided, but that 500 new daily trips probably comes down to like 300. Your net trips probably, instead of 48, it might be in your 30s in the after. So there is a change, not a huge change, but there is a change from what's out there today.
Yeah. So again, it would actually be less than what's being presented by the engineer or the applicant. And then again, you know, there's a lot of differences between, okay, what's been required or requested in the past as opposed to what's being requested or required right now, because they're still early in the stages of development. So what you typically see in other jurisdictions is they come up with bubble plans of what their expectations are going to be for the site, meaning that they would come up with maximums as far as how much square footage they believe that they could bring to that piece of property. And that's what they've brought to the town council, stating that we think that we can bring, I think it was 21,000 square feet.
21,750, yes, sir.
Yeah, so that would be the maximum that they would be allowed to develop on the property. And that's based on just their bubble plan. It's not showing renderings, engineering, so on and so forth. And their justification of not showing that just yet, because they still have several other steps that they have to go through, and I'll have Brad explain those. But they don't want to spend the money justifiably because they don't know what they're going to get. They don't know what they can have. So they need a starting point of what they believe they can have an approval for, as opposed to them just coming up with, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars of renderings just to be turned down. So that was the argument for when they went in front of DRB, was to say, listen, you only require us meeting this threshold, not this threshold at this point. Once we get to this point, we'll definitely meet that threshold. But we're just not there yet because we don't know what town council is going to be approving us for as far as square footage. And I'll let Brad take you step by step of, okay, what happens at town council on March 20.
Actually, Robert, we're going to be now April and June for our hearing dates. We're going to have to renotice now with the workshop being pushed.
Okay, so April and June will be the dates now. So in April, I'll let Brad explain to you what's going to happen at that meeting. And then in June, I'll have him explain to you what's going to happen at that meeting as well.
Okay, yeah. So here's a process in the nutshell for everyone. So it's basically a 3-step process. The first step is a conceptual plan, which they've already been through. And what that is, basically they just provide a general idea of what they want to do, what they think they want to do, and provide a concept plan. And that is given to the Development Review Board for each of them individually to review and provide any comments or feedback on it. So they went through that process back in October. And the DRB members did provide comments individually. They provided comments, which we then provided to the applicant. So then they moved into step 2, and that's the step we're in now. And that's the rezoning preliminary development plan process. So in this process, as Robert said, one is we go through the rezoning to assign the planned unit development zoning to the property. And then also approve a preliminary plan, as Robert said, kind of the initial plan of what they think they want to do and how large or the biggest it might be, depending on further engineering. So that's the process we're in now. We're in now the process of the rezoning of the property, giving it the zoning that's needed for it to move forward, and then also considering a preliminary plan that kind of gives the general concept and idea of what they want to do in the large, kind of the bigger picture of it. If this gets approved, once it goes to council, it'll go to 2 hearings with the town council. Right now, it looks like it'll be in April, then in June. Why we have that gap there between April and June is the town codes requires 30 days between the council hearings for PUD rezonings. And we don't have 30 days between the April and the May meeting. It's 28 days. It's close, but it's not 30. So that pushes it out to June for that second meeting. If it gets approved by town council, that does not approve any development to occur on the property. What that approval does, it gives it the zoning on the property, and it basically sets the parameters under which they have to now move forward to further design the project. What the town council, if they were to adopt this, they would be also adopting a development agreement, which would set out the standards, set out any other conditions that may be placed on the project. So if it gets approved, then what they do, they go back, and now they're going to go to full engineered plans, where these questions that we have today about, as Robert said, like the septic and maybe the parking and some of these issues that haven't been fully fleshed out yet, those get fleshed out in that final engineered plan. Because at that point, we're going to see the final plans 100% engineered. Those will come back to the town for more public hearings. Those will go back to the Development Review Board. We will hold a public hearing just like we're doing now. The Development Review Board will review it, provide their recommendation on that final plan, assuring compliance. And that's, as Robert said, that's the most important thing for us as staff, is we just want to assure it meets the compliance of the code. That's what our job is to advise what the code is and whether it's compliant or not. And then it'll go to the town council again for 2 public hearings. They will notice for then town council ultimately have the ability to approve or deny the final engineering plan of this project. So they are still quite a ways away to get to the point where they have the approval of the town to move forward with development on this project. So there will be another bite at the apple for everybody through the hearing process when they get to that final development plan, because at that point we'll see building elevations, we'll know what the proposed buildings might look like, we'll have a much cleaner and clearer idea of what the size of the buildings based on the septic limitations and these other kind of issues that are still kind of outstanding. Once they have, if they get all through that, they get the final development plan approved by the town council. At that point, now it just turns into issuance of the building permits for them to begin construction. But they are still quite a ways away from that part. They still have to go through that, they still have to get through the preliminary plan process with town council and then go through the final development plan with DRB and town council.
Right. And then another question was, if their submittal that they did to DRB is substantially different than what they are submitting to town council, will they have to go to DRB? And I would only say yes if it exceeds the amount that was requested at DRB.
Right. Correct, Robert. The way the code is written related to that situation where we have a final plan that may differ from the approved preliminary plan, if it's less, if it has less footprint, it has less impact, it does not have to go back through the whole process again because we're having a less impact than what was anticipated in the preliminary plan. If they come back to us and it's larger, if say the square footage right now, it's saying 21,750. If somehow in their analysis they determine they can do 22,000 square feet and they provide that, that will trigger it going back through the process of the preliminary plan with the DRB and the town council again.
Brad, do we know how many square feet they have currently?
I don't have that off the top of my head. It was, and I believe you have it posted on the website, it was part of their presentation they provided to the DRB, the existing uses that are out there. I want to say it was in the neighborhood of 10,000 square feet between the three buildings. Because, the one building, the ice cream shop is very small. Real estate building's not very big. Elysium's really the biggest of those three buildings that are out there. And then we have the 2 single family homes on the back.
Yeah. So the net would be 11,000 square feet addition.
Roughly, yeah. Somewhere between 11 and 12,000 square feet addition.
All right. All right. There's a statement. Susan Carter's on the phone, so I'm going to unmute her or ask her to unmute and ask her a question.
Okay, so there's a tree survey that's been done on the trees that are on this property and they're tagged. And I was wondering, does anybody have access to that tree survey? And if I'm able to get hold of it?
We do not have the current or the new or updated tree survey that you see there yet. That has not been submitted to the town yet. The only one that we have that was submitted with their preliminary plan was one that was done back originally in 2006. So that updated tree plan will be submitted as part of the final development plan, because it has to be when they get to that final development plan part.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are some very substantial sized oaks on the property, on the edge of, on the corner of the property that we would be very interested in seeing protected. But if possible and when, I would love to have that copy of that information.
Absolutely. Yes, as soon as we get it, absolutely, it's a public record. You can have it.
As part of their DRB submittal, they did show that they were trying to protect those trees that were on the northeast corner as much as possible by even creating some enclaves in their development to make sure that they were protecting those trees. But they will have to, again, during construction or during our pre-construction meetings, adhere to the standards that we have in our land development codes. And also if there's trees that can be protected through the development plan, we'll try to advocate for that, as well as maybe some trade-offs, maybe for parking, if we can save some trees.
I appreciate it.
Right, and they are subject to the town's tree ordinance related to mitigation and payment and things of that nature as well. So they are held like anybody else to the town's tree code.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
And for those of you that don't know, people may assume that we're light on people that violate the tree ordinance, but the most recent person that did is looking at about a $7,000 fine for cutting trees without a plan or a permit. And that's thanks to our tree board, our council members, Brad, and code enforcement. Ms. Neal, we did answer your question, but we'll answer it at the very end as well. I just want to make sure that we got everybody else's questions answered on the other topic. Anybody else? I don't see any hands raised. So Ms. Neal, I can go ahead and get back to your question again. Brad, again, it was, does the 2007 plan overlay require that the existing residential properties be rezoned to commercial for development, or is it an option to develop, improve the existing commercial property without rezoning the residential properties?
Right. Yeah. So the answer to that is the town's comprehensive plan related to development within this town center overlay district. It requires the property to be rezoned to planned unit development, to PUD, not to commercial, but to PUD, to assure that the development of the property is consistent with the downtown master plan and the conditions and the requirements of that. So it's not required to go to commercial, but it is required to get the PUD zoning, which is the process that they're going through now to get that zoning. And part of that master plan is that the buildings are located at the front along Main Street and the parking is on the back lots along Oakdale. And to assure it's consistent with that and with the buffering and all.
Mr. Martini?
Me, please. I think what Deborah's asking is it possible for them to redevelop the the site with that much square footage without also changing those residential to parking? I don't think there's enough parking in town, and I know that they have to accommodate parking on their property in order to be able to develop that. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Mr. Martinez, so the answer to that would be in the way the town's code in the downtown district is implemented within your comprehensive plan and in your land development code is the answer is no. The town's code only allows redevelopment or development within that master plan area consistent with the downtown master plan. So someone could not buy just, we'll say, those front lots that front on Main and redevelop those to some other commercial use and leave the lots behind vacant or with the two homes that are on there now. The town's code requires any development within that boundary to go through this process and develop consistent with that master plan. That was the implementation mechanism when this was adopted back in 2004 to 2007, how the town put in place the ability to implement this master plan.
Any additional questions? Any additional questions on the 500 block? Because I have another question relative to other development. Again, this is, the first bite of the apple is going to be in April. We will have a workshop set up in March after we have the election, so we know who the council members are going to be. And that workshop will be open to the public, taking Q&A from both the applicant, staff, and the council members. And then you have your first option in April to discuss it with town council at a public meeting. And then the second public meeting will be in June, right?
Yes.
All right.
That's correct, June, right.
And that's again, just giving them that bubble plan, and that's not approving any real development until we get into the secondary round. Where you actually see the renderings of the building, so on and so forth. Question I have is, do you have any updates on 2nd Avenue? Yes, our friends at Orange County Utilities are dragging their feet, as we've seen in the past. Since we did incorporate the water utility master plan into the West 2nd Avenue project, now we need Orange County Utilities to approve the design of that project. And then we have to enter into an interlocal agreement to where we design, construct, and turn over those lines to Orange County Utilities. Just so you're aware of how long it takes them to get stuff back to us, our Park Avenue project has been done for, I would say, 14 months now. And they still owe us about $200,000 of reimbursables for that project when it closed out. So they keep saying the check is in the mail. So, and once we get their approval, then we can move forward with the final design. And we are still negotiating an agreement with the 4 property owners at the end of West 2nd Avenue as well. But I think we're going to be able to get that agreement in place prior to development. We did get extensions for our projects from Department of Emergency Management because it's justified. It's in another agency's hands, and especially if we're trying to provide them with potable water systems and fire protection systems. I would be remiss if I didn't state too is on Friday, you'll start seeing some postings relative for you, the residents, to help us get money for a lot of these projects. We submitted some budget appropriations through the state via Representative Geraldine Thompson and Representative Torres, who's in the Senate, and then Republican, or not Republican, but the House, for 5 appropriations. Phase 1, 2, and 3 of our master utility plan, they're at around $3 million each. And for our multimodal path and for the pedestrian bridge. So we're asking for appropriations at around $12 million. So what we need from you as residents is to contact those people that sit on those appropriation committees, or just go ahead and start blasting some emails at the legislators to help bolster our chances of getting those monies for those projects. Unless we get appropriations, it's very hard for us to get either CDBG grants, which are now being released by the state because we really don't qualify for CDBG. That's community development block grants. So it's based on pretty much income, jobs, so on and so forth. So we're really not going to be able to get those. And the only ones that we can really get are those hazard mitigation grant projects, which are, if an emergency happens or a disaster happens, then you can get some money. But unless we get some appropriations, those projects are going to be put on hold for a little bit until we can gain the money from the tax revenue that we currently have. Or if council wants to expedite those, they would have to increase taxes, and I don't think anybody wants that.
I think a good example of that, Robert, is the 7th and Butler, and also the Bessie Street road projects are essentially from Irma.
Yeah.
They're
In West Second Avenue. So
from that far back. So
yeah, so from Irma, we're still working on those HMGP grants, and also Hurricane Michael. We've submitted some because there's some excess revenues from FEMA to the state of Florida in order for us to hopefully leverage to get more projects funded. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see what happens. But now that Irma happened, other jurisdictions are like, oh, wow, why didn't we submit for those monies? So we were lucky to get those approved. And that's from the West 2nd Avenue to the Bessie and Butler project. That's equivalent to about $3 million. And for those of you that are on, our total budget each and every year is about $6 million. So that's a huge benefit for the town of Windermere. Can staff send out the email addresses to who we should blast emails? Yes, we will. In the postings, I've put in links for each and every one of the House bills, where if you click on the bill, it'll tell you which committee members are on that appropriation committee, and you can email them. We'll probably come up with a blanket email that you can send to them. Sometimes that kind of works against you if they don't see anything that's really personalized. If you have something that you just say, hey, listen, I've been in Windermere for this amount of time. I've been on a well. This is how many times it's gone down. This is how many times it's been contaminated, so on and so forth. Or, we want fire protection. Last time we had a fire, X and Y, Z happened, stuff like that. But if you have a blanket email or a blanket statement, sometimes that they keep seeing it and they're like, okay, it's got signatures. But if they see different stories, different takes, and different emails, then sometimes that has more of an impact. Anything else? And Karen, be my guest. You can take Stella whenever. Right now. You may regret that. And if Stella, if you're watching, I love you. Just joking. When you're like 18 or something like that. Ms. Robeson, do you still have something to say? I don't know if you kept your hand up. No? Man, everybody's just bowing out right now. All right, if there's nothing else, I appreciate you all joining us tonight, and have a great Thursday night. And we'll make sure we send out those. Oh, yes, Landra, I'm sorry, Landra. I muted, Ashley, unmute. There you go.
That's okay. I just couldn't help but say that I actually, Senator Thompson's former legislative aide, and actually worked on the budget. So the letter writing definitely works. The squeaky wheel gets the definitely gets the oil. And if you all could also do a phone call campaign as well, even if you do like robocalls, because they definitely get the attention of the people, because they get so much mail, they get so many emails. But if you all just have one blanket message that is constantly coming in, trust me, you will get attention. So that's very, very important. So that's a great idea.
Great. Thank you so much for that. All right. Okay, well, we'll make sure that we post out the dates for the workshop. And again, the election is on March 9th. Councilman Martini, who's on the line right now, is running for re-election. And then you have Manny David, Tony Davitt, and Mike Hargraves as well, who are running for office. So you have 4 candidates running for 3 seats. And again, thank you very much for attending, and I'll bid you a good night. Thank you, Brad, for joining us. And thank you, Landry, too.